We understood before going into the break as to why we need to go back in time to understand the India-Nepal relationship. India, it seems, there was some historical literature supporting, it wanted to be a part of India as a province. That's what Nepal wanted to do, just like Sikkim. But due to several factors, historical as they may be, it didn't work out. And that explains partially why during the last couple of decades, India-Nepal relationship has undergone a sea change. And in the backdrop of that, as the current protests continue to intensify, it has ramifications for India from a strategic point of view, from a security point of view. The fact that there's been such a sea change in power in Nepal, that you had a king who was deposed and you had a Maoist leader who actually was a pioneer of guerrilla warfare in Nepal, now running and being part of the establishment. Who brought about these changes? How did that actually happen? From a kingdom, Hindu kingdom, all the way to a communist country with guerrilla warfare background, now leading and being part of establishment. That is important to understand to really decode the future of Nepal and Nepali government. I'm going to play out this report to tell you in detail the players who are part of the Nepali political landscape.
Nepal's pro-monarchy movement is gaining traction, triggering a growing tug of war between powerful voices trying to define Nepal's identity. At the heart of the pro-monarchy movement is King Gyanendra Shah, Nepal's last monarch who ruled during the country's final years as a Hindu kingdom. Taking the throne in 2001 after the tragic massacre of his elder brother and family, King Gyanendra shifted Nepal away from the constitutional monarchy established by his brother King Birendra and seized absolute power, citing a national crisis and Maoist insurgency. Eventually stripped of his throne in 2008, Shah remained an important symbol of unity and Hindu identity within Nepal, with his return sparking the pro-monarchy movement this year. King Gyanendra's silences speak louder than words, with his rare speeches hinting at his dissatisfaction with Nepal's political direction, often seen as a rallying cry for a return to monarchy. Then comes the Rashtriya Prajatantra Party, the only mainstream political party in the country, openly demanding the restoration of the monarchy and Nepal's Hindu state status. Fueling this renewed movement is former Deputy Prime Minister Rajendra Lingden and veteran pro-monarchy leader Kamal Thapa, calling for a return to tradition and national unity to resonate with the youth and disenchanted middle class. Finally, one of the most prominent yet controversial faces opposing the pro-monarchy movement is former Nepal Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal, or Prachanda, once a rebel leader of Nepal's bloody Maoist insurgency who brought down the monarchy. Prachanda became a key figure in Nepal's transition to a republic in 2008. From the jungle to the government, Prachanda's journey to power was a violent one, costing 17,000 lives. Despite the growing monarchist movement, Prachanda remains defiant, determined not to let the crown return. In this battle for identity, who will rise to the top remains to be seen. NDTV Bureau Report.
All right, let's get in Manjeev Puri. He's a former ambassador of India to Nepal to really decode some of what is happening right now. Ambassador Puri, this is a show where we try and decode fault lines within any country, region, particular issue. And one of the biggest fault lines that runs through Nepal is its jostle for identity. The pro-monarchy, pro-Hindu kingdom a sentiment that is clashing with the present sentiment, or also the other sentiment about the communist government-centric view. How do you see this battle for Nepal's identity playing out going forward in terms of the pro-monarchy and the pro-government protesters clashing?
Gaurie, thank you very much for having me on your program, and thank you for focusing on Nepal, which in my view is one of the most important countries in terms of India and our relations in the world. Now, please don't mind my saying so, but the graphics that you showed earlier, their conclusions are a little different. Nepal was never a state of India. The British had separate treaties with Nepal.
I said the same, that Nepal was never a state of India.
Gaurie, please listen to me a little bit. Because the kind of comparisons that you drew with Sikkim are totally untenable. Sikkim was a protectorate of British India.
Right.
Nepal was not. Do you know the British embassy in Nepal reported to London, not to New Delhi. The Nepalese never did it. So I think we should be very clear on this. And all this business of they wanted to say, there are just some kind of vague reports, because India is the country that brought democracy to Nepal, that always stood for the Nepalese people and Nepal wanting democracy. Even this business in 2006, bringing about a kind of patch-up, a political dialogue resulting in a political comprehensive peace agreement in Nepal. India had the most important hand, which is recognized even by Nepalis. India is a country of influence in Nepal. That's what I want to tell you. And the reason for that is because we stand with the people of Nepal. Now, these monarchy protests. Let me say something to you. All the pro-monarchy people, in 2008, it was abolished. The entire parliament, every party voted for it to be abolished. Their pro-monarchy parties have barely managed to get one or two seats in a 275 house. These protests are there. They happened on 28th of May this time. Again, they've petered out. They've been having a fight with each other. This is the nature of it. Now, why do some people hanker for monarchy? Nepal is a young nation. They don't even know what was going on during the monarchy. They are disenchanted, as your earlier interlocutor here said. They're disenchanted, they are frustrated.
Right.
They find that politics is not delivering what they thought it would. Switzerland of South Asia, it is not. And so therefore, they don't know what to do it. And some people say, here is the king, this was good old times, those kind of words.
Absolutely.
No, the reality is, Nepal needs good governance.
Absolutely.
It needs better governance. It needs governance which responds to the democratic aspirations and economic aspirations.
And the young people's aspirations.
Correct. Absolutely. And I'll say something else to you, Gaurie. It needs mentioning and noting in India. Nepal is perhaps a more globalized country than we are.
Absolutely. Ambassador Puri, I want to come in there for a question, and I'm going to give you all the time, sir. This is a question where the attempt is to decode. Yeah, no debate, just to decode. That's the idea. I want to understand that, you're right about mentioning that misgovernance and corruption is the root cause of why there's so much of anguish regarding the present dispensation, a dozen odd governments in the last decade. But the reason why we also want to decode this in greater detail is because the pro-monarchy sentiment, we want to understand in greater detail. Of course, there's anguish. Of course, there's disenchantment. But the fact that it's leading into and feeding into the pro-monarchy sentiment is something I want to understand from you and decode that for our viewers in detail.
So, Gaurie, I'm not sure there's any pro-monarchy sentiment other than for a few people. Those people are using the idea of a monarch, the good old days, to project themselves and try and be there. They've actually not been successful in the power game in Kathmandu. But the politicians in Nepal are wily people. There is always every possibility that they turn around and resurrect some kind of form of monarchy in some sense, no king and no real sovereign in that sense. If they find that it appeases things and get their politics done. It's a country where politicians are rent-seeking, where politicians are willing to do anything to remain in power. And basically, there are three big players who've been sharing power over the last 10, 15, 20 years. Two of them are currently in power together, which makes it a very formidable combination. Mr. K.P. Sharma Oli, who's Prime Minister and who comes from the Communist Party, and Mr. Sher Bahadur Byoba, who's the leader of the Nepali Congress, the big democratic party, symbolic party of Nepal, symbolizing democracy. Yes. You mentioned Mr. Prachand. Gaurie, it's important for us to know that when the Maoists were waging their insurgency in Nepal, the Chinese had nothing to do with it. They said, who are these Maoists? We have nothing to do with it. Absolutely. And in fact, their inspirations all came from India. And that's why we had the ability to be able to tell everyone, look, come together. You are a good country. You are an important country for us. Get your act together. Democracy is what we do. Democracy is the best for you. And we have had a sterling role in guiding Nepal. This is a trying time because globalization, its benefits are not
absolutely, sir.
That we wanted.
Absolutely, sir. We decoded this in detail. You can't fault me for not giving you enough time. It's a complex issue And I'm going to keep coming back because it impacts us on so many levels. Ambassador Puri, thank you so much. You heard all the views here. You heard reports that tell you exactly what all has been the historical perspective of the India-Nepal relationship. One can go back in time to understand some of the context of those events to really have a better view of how things are unfolding right now. But the reason why we need to decode this in greater detail, well, China has been growing its influence in Nepal. It's been pumping in money in its traditional BRI format. Give more loans to get more influence. And if Nepal goes down the way as some of the other debt-ridden countries, it has huge ramifications for India, because we cannot have greater Chinese hold in Nepal, our backyard, a country that has deep historical, cultural ties with India. The fact that a Chinese official just a few weeks back named Mount Everest with a Chinese name indicates the clout that Chinese companies and officials are beginning to have in Nepal, which is why understanding the cultural ethos, the religious and cultural impact that Nepal and India ties have is so very important. Engagement is important with Kathmandu, ensuring that our bilateral ties continue to get strengthened, whether on historical or cultural or religious or economic aspects, is extremely important. And keeping an eye on the uncertainty and the complete fluidity of the political landscape in Nepal is probably the need of the hour. And on that note, completely timed out as we try to decode yet another fault line. We're going to come back next week with another episode of Fault Lines to decode beyond the headlines, beyond the divide, because there are issues that need greater clarity and more in-depth focus. Thank you so much for watching this episode.